Alright, hello, we're back and we're talking about two different jackets today. These jackets are from the movie Skyfall, which is one of the most famous Bond movies. Came out in 2012, around the 50th anniversary of James Bond, and I remember it really well. I was only about 13 or 14 at the time, so it was about that point when I was beginning to notice things in films like the costume elements, the way films are constructed, the outfits that they put characters in, reflecting maybe their emotions in the scenes that they're in. And I think that thing can be said very much for these two jackets. They are jackets that reflect a kind of emotional mood in the scenes that they're used in, and these are jackets that stuck in my mind since I first saw that film. It wouldn't be for another sort of decade or so before I actually went out and found both of these jackets and added them to my wardrobe. But I want to talk about them today. I want to talk about the versatility of them and really how these jackets have become timeless pieces that you could have picked up and worn in 2012 when the film first came out, and that you could pick up and wear now and still look just as good. So to my right, we've got the Levi's Menlo jacket. This is the jacket that is worn in the earlier scenes in the film when Bond is enjoying death after the incident in Istanbul. He wears this scene when he sees that there's been a terrorist attack on MI6, and then he comes back to London and he is introduced back to M. He goes to the new digs for MI6, and he wears this jacket kind of the whole time up until he starts his reintegration training program. The jacket on my left is the Barbour Commander jacket. This jacket is worn for the kind of entire final sequence of the film where Bond is in Skyfall in Scotland. Presumably this jacket is somewhere within the Skyfall house. He puts it on whilst training with the groundskeeper, and he wears it kind of up until that final sequence in the church with M. So that's a little bit about these two jackets. We're going to start with the Menlo jacket. We'll talk about why I like it so much. We'll talk about the details of it. And then we'll talk about the Barbour jacket, because there's a little bit more to say about this one in regards to modifications. You know I like talking about modifications. I've talked about them in previous videos. And there were some done to this jacket. But this one appears just exactly as it was on screen, with no modifications. So let's start with the Menlo. Alright, so here's the Menlo jacket. Originally released by Levi's as LVC, Levi's Vintage Clothing, around the time that the movie came out. This jacket is a 1930s style sort of dock worker jacket, if you like. I've seen that phrase kind of thrown around online when describing this jacket. It's very American in style. It has that American heritage look to it. It's made out of lambskin, so it's a very, very supple leather texture to it, and it's heavily distressed. It looks like really, really old, really, really well worn, and that was definitely kind of the vibe that they were going for when we see Bond in this jacket while he is enjoying death on the Turkish coast. So looking at some of the details of this jacket, it only has two pockets. That's one of the flaws of this jacket, I would say, that it doesn't have an inside pocket, but I think because the leather is so thin, probably wouldn't really work with an inside pocket. We've got this one here and one here, and that's all for pockets. In regards to interior lining, the tag doesn't actually say what this is, but I fear that it looks like a polyester. I could be wrong, it could be viscose. But it's one of the things about this jacket that I don't like. I almost feel like a nice kind of blanket lining in here would really improve this jacket. Maybe if I wanted to alter it sometime, I would have this lining replaced. I like the colour, and sometimes on eBay and in secondhand marketplace sites, you can actually find this jacket with like a darker orange lining, which also looks really nice. But the lining from the movie, as far as I'm aware, is this lighter sort of goldenrod colour in the jacket. As I said, no inside pockets, just this kind of golden lining texture that is on the jacket. Collar is fairly simple, comes out big kind of wide 30s style collar here. When Bond wears it in the film, we see the collar is kind of popped, so the whole time he hasn't done in the film, it's kind of got this like lifted collar kind of look, which is also the same for the Barbour jacket. So the casual jackets that he wears in this film, he always seems to have the kind of collar turned up. And it's not really styled any other way. I don't think he fastens it at any point either. It's always unfastened. But it has this really simple, iconic look to it. Sleeves, we have cuffs on either side with adjustable buttons. Again, fairly simple in design, nicely supple and distressed in regards to the leather there. And on the back, we have these wonderful vents with fasteners on the side to adjust the tightness of the jacket, which also just look really, really nice. Aside from that, it is fairly simple in construction, but it's fairly effective at creating that kind of American heritage look when worn. I was fairly surprised when this jacket was identified, and it was identified as a Levi's because it's not usually a brand that we would associate with Bond, especially around the 50th anniversary of the franchise, when, you know, it was very much Britain and British brands. You know, I think Daniel Craig's Bond had a bit of a love affair with Tom Ford. A lot of the stuff he wore was Tom Ford, Crockett and Jones, for example, for the boots, all very, very British. But this is Levi's. This is an American brand, obviously, that Daniel Craig was wearing in that film. And here it is on. So straight away you can see how that sheepskin leather kind of supplely falls and folds on the sleeves. This is a size medium. I would say that the sleeves on this are probably a little longer than I would like them to be, but I haven't had this altered. It's just exactly pristine as it was when bought. I used to have this in a size small, and the sleeves were too long on that, so I did have those altered. And when it came back from the tailors, it was my fault, just the measurements that I provided, they were too short, so the jacket looked ridiculous, like the sleeves were up here. So I had to sell it, basically, and then eventually came across a medium, got that. Kind of prefer it in a sense because you can layer underneath it a bit nicer, especially when you're only working with the two exterior pockets that are actually really shallow. There's not much you can do with them. So it's good to maybe have another layer on underneath or pocket in your trousers to be putting stuff in. But as I say, one of my favourite things about this jacket is definitely how it looks from the back. I love these belt bits on the side, and the back loop just gives it like a really complementary look as it's kind of tapered in at the sides, which I really like. And just adds to this kind of idea that it looks like a jacket that's maybe been passed down through generations. Your granddad had it, then your dad had it, then he's passed it on to you, and over time it's kind of broken down and got this really supple, aged look. I think that's maybe what they were going for with Bond's jacket. It looks like something he maybe just found whilst he was enjoying death, wearing about, hasn't took much care of really, but that's kind of the whole look and the whole vibe of those scenes, I think. So yeah, it creates a really nice look. It makes a really nice versatile jacket that you can pair with a lot of stuff, as long as you've got plenty of pockets. Alright, so that is the Menlo jacket. As I said, this jacket appeared in Skyfall completely unaltered. Doesn't have a lot of scenes, and the scenes that it does have are quite dark and dimly lit. So I wouldn't say it's like an iconic jacket, but I think when you have it in person and you see it in front of you, it's just a gorgeous jacket. It is one of my all-time favourite jackets. I'm scared to wear it because I like it so much. And I think it's that aged quality that makes it really, really distinctive and really, really likeable. So that's the Menlo. Let's move on then to the jacket on my left, which is the Barbour Commander jacket. Now, I mentioned that this jacket was worn entirely unaltered in the film. The same cannot be said for the Barbour jacket. Let's take a closer look at it and work out what was modified and why. Alright, so here is the Barbour Commander jacket. Now, when this jacket first appeared in Skyfall, there was maybe a little bit of confusion. Nobody could find this jacket. The reason is that the costume department modified it. They modified it not drastically, but they did a few things to it. Now, the first thing that this jacket originally came with is it had a hood. It had a zip-off hood around the back here, and the costume department not only removed the zip-off hood, but they also removed kind of the hardware, the zipper, from around the collar to make it look like it never had one. Additionally, they also removed kind of the buttons from around here where that hood attachment would go on. And thirdly, there was a storm flap here. If you don't know what a storm flap is, it's just because this jacket buttons, if you're, say, riding a motorbike or you're out in really, really harsh wintry weather, the breeze, the cold is going to be getting into that jacket and still affecting you. So a storm flap is like a piece of fabric. In this case, it was a piece of tweed fabric that just folded over the inside of the jacket, and then you fastened the jacket over it. And then it left us with a jacket much like this. Now, when the film first came out, people were kind of buying the jackets, and I don't know if anybody modified an original. I presume somebody did, but I've never seen a modified original, because there was a big, big demand for this jacket. It was used for the final scene, the final moments of the film, in a massive sort of standoff sequence, and a lot of people were drawn in by it, so they wanted it. Barbour, who makes this jacket, kind of realised there was a desire for it, so they re-released it in 2013. They re-released this jacket not as the original looked, but as the movie version looked. So Barbour released a new version where they removed the storm flap, they removed the zip hood attachment from the back, and they made a few other changes to the lining and Barbour location on the pocket here. Not sure why they did that, if they were trying to replicate the Skyfall jacket, but it creates that difference between the two, so you know which one you're looking at. and that is the jacket you're looking at here today. Let's take a closer look at this version then. I'll tell you a little bit about how this differs from the original as well. So starting off, we've got this wonderful waxed cotton exterior, 3-button closure. The bottom 2 buttons are actually closer together than the top button, which is a kind of distinctive feature about this jacket. I'm not sure why it's done in that way. I guess when it's unfastened, the lapel kind of folds itself over the 3rd button quite nicely. So it might be kind of a feature just to hide that 3rd button or place it in a more appropriate setting when the jacket is open. You get 2 exterior side pockets. These are kind of attached to the body of the coat, so you can put your hand in and they have this really nice kind of like scrumpled look. I know Bond puts his hand in them a lot during Skyfall as he's walking around. We got a top pocket here that is built into the jacket, so it's not an attached patch. That's sort of hidden inside the jacket, and we don't have one on this side, obviously. It's constructed in kind of like a blazer fashion, this jacket, but because it's waxed, it's much more relaxed, it's much warmer as well, which kind of is why Bond is wearing it during those scenes. Around the back is traditional with kind of hunting jackets. We have 2 Barbour zips that just create this big area in the back where you can store things if needed. Collar is contrasting dark brown leather. Bond, much like with the Menlo jacket, wears his collar up the whole time in the film, so we never really see that detail. It makes the jacket a bit more casual when the collar's up, as opposed to when it's down. It kind of has a bit more of a formal look, so suits Bond in that setting for the collar to be up, I think. And then inside the jacket we have this lovely typical Barbour cotton lining with the checkered pattern. And we have this kind of strip of tweed here as well, this dark green tweed that leads us to the inside pocket as well. As I say, on the original, that would have been a storm flap, so that would have folded out and covered the whole jacket, but the costume department removed that. We've got some care labels as well for the Barbour here, which is really nice. And this is the same on the other side. We have that cotton interior lining on both sides of the jacket. So really lovely jacket. It is obviously a British made jacket, the Barbour company, so it felt only right really when we talk about the Menlo being a Levi's jacket, being an American brand, for the final sequence of Skyfall when they're up in Scotland, for Bond to be wearing something British, and a heritage British brand as well, and a really iconic brand that you would associate with British design and British fashion too. Let's put it on then, see what it looks like on. Alright, so here we've got the Barbour jacket on, and straight away you can see it has a really, really nice form fit to it. I would almost describe it as being a slim fit. This is a size small, unlike the Menlo that was a medium, so kind of already I'm going to have a slimmer fit, and I think it fits just right. You can see I'm wearing it fastened as well, much like how Bond did in Skyfall. We've got these really nice deep exterior pockets here to keep your hands warm, and I just love the look that it creates when the hands are in the pockets like that. Really just makes me feel like Bond. Opening the jacket, again, just a nicer look at that interior lining. This interior lining on the original was also in the sleeves, but it does not have it on the sleeves on the re-release. We just have like a plain brown synthetic lining, I think, which is, I think it's because the cotton was more delicate, so it was breaking after people were wearing it for a long time. So you have kind of a tougher material in here now on the re-release, which I'm not complaining about. And yeah, that's the Barbour jacket. So I think that brings us back to the question of this video. Have these jackets stood the test of time? Are they still as iconic, versatile as they were when the film first came out and people were looking for them? Well, I think the answer is obviously yes. Even without Skyfall, these jackets in their own right are 2 wonderful jackets. You can go on eBay now and you'll be hard pressed to find a Menlo jacket that is under 4 figures. You know, they've become really, really rare and really, really sought after. And I'm sure at one point these were selling on end for like £200 or something before people realised they were used in Skyfall and before the price skyrocketed. As for the Barbour jacket, even without Bond, Barbour is an iconic British brand. And as I said before, for the 50th anniversary of Bond, for him to be wearing this jacket in Skyfall and representing that British heritage and representing that iconic Barbour jacket as well, just felt right. It just felt right. And both of these jackets kind of reflect Bond in the scenes that he's in. This is kind of like the rebel leather jacket, the runaway Bond, the Bond who's given up on his life as a spy and is just enjoying death and is pulled back into that world. And this jacket represents heritage. It represents where he comes from. It represents his home, Skyfall in Scotland. If you're considering picking up either of these jackets, maybe you found one on eBay, it's in your watch list and you're thinking, oh, is the price worth it? definitely go for it. Definitely get them. You will not regret it. They are both brilliant. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.